The rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of Nobu Miami as Yoo Sang-hyuk checked his Patek Philippe for the third time. 8:47 p.m. His blind date was nearly an hour late. He should leave. This was exactly why he avoided personal entanglements, unpredictable, messy, inefficient. But Raphael had insisted this woman was perfect for his image, a corporate lawyer from an established family who could help legitimize his entertainment empire. Then she walked in, soaked from the Miami downpour, her box braids slightly disheveled, wearing a simple black dress that had clearly seen better days. She moved with quiet dignity, despite being obviously out of place in the city's most exclusive restaurant. Sang-hyuk felt something shift in his chest, a recognition he couldn't name. She approached his table hesitantly. Are you waiting for someone named Anya? Anya Moreau. His voice came out rougher than intended. Yes, that's me. I'm so sorry I'm late. I got lost and... She stopped, taking in his expensive suit, the private dining room, the way staff deferred to him. I think there's been a mistake. But as their eyes met across the candle-lit table, Sang-hyuk knew with absolute certainty there had been no mistake. This was exactly where she was supposed to be, 2 hours earlier. Anya Moreau's hands were raw from scrubbing office floors when her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Blind date tonight. Nobu Miami, 8 p.m. Ask for the U reservation. She stared at the message in confusion. She hadn't agreed to any blind date. But then she remembered. Her co-worker Maria had been trying to set her up for months, always saying Anya worked too hard and needed to live a little. Standing in the empty law office where she cleaned after hours, surrounded by the scent of industrial disinfectant and the hum of fluorescent lights, Anya almost deleted the message. She had studying to do for her nursing program, bills to pay and a video call scheduled with her siblings in Haiti. But something made her pause. When was the last time someone had thought of her as anything other than the girl who cleaned their offices or served their coffee? When had anyone seen her as worth dating? She looked down at her uniform, faded scrubs and worn sneakers, then at her reflection in the dark window. At 25, she felt ancient sometimes, carrying the weight of her family's survival on her shoulders since their mother's death 3 years ago. Maybe Maria was right. Maybe she did need to live a little. The decision made, Anya rushed through the rest of her cleaning route. She caught 3 different buses home to Little Haiti, the journey taking over an hour as she transferred from downtown Miami to her neighborhood. The contrast was stark. From gleaming office towers to colorful but weathered buildings, from the scent of expensive coffee to the familiar aroma of griot and plantains from corner restaurants. In her tiny shared apartment, she stood before her meager closet. Most of her clothes were work uniforms or study-appropriate casual wear. Finally, she settled on the one dress she owned, a simple black number her grandmother had sewn for her high school graduation. It was outdated but well-made, and with her mother's small gold earrings, it would have to do. The journey back to South Beach was another odyssey of public transportation. As the bus wound through different neighborhoods, Anya watched Miami transform around her, from working-class communities to increasingly upscale areas until finally reaching the glittering towers and neon lights of South Beach. She'd never been to this part of Miami, except to clean office buildings early in the morning when the streets were empty. Now at night, it pulsed with energy and wealth that felt like a different world entirely. Finding Nobu took another 20 minutes of walking in heels that pinched her feet. When she finally stood before the restaurant's sleek entrance, watching beautiful people in designer clothes glide past the hostess, Anya's confidence wavered. This was a mistake, she didn't belong here. But she'd come this far, and somewhere inside, a small voice whispered that maybe, just maybe, she deserved something beautiful in her life. The hostess looked her up and down with barely concealed disdain. Do you have a reservation? Yes, under you. The woman's expression shifted to surprise, then professional courtesy. Of course, right this way. Anya followed her through the restaurant, acutely aware of the stares from other diners. The private dining room was more elegant than anywhere she'd ever been. Soft lighting, ocean views, and a table set for 2 with more silverware than she knew how to use. And there he was, The man sitting at the table was nothing like what she'd expected. Tall, impeccably dressed in what was clearly a custom suit, with sharp features and eyes that seemed to see everything. He radiated power and control in a way that made her suddenly understand why the staff moved around him with such deference. This was definitely a mistake. Are you waiting for someone named Anya?" When he confirmed her identity, she felt heat rise in her cheeks. "I think there's been a mistake." But he stood gracefully, moving around the table to pull out her chair. "Please, sit. You're here now." His voice carried a slight accent. Korean, she realized, and something in his tone made her sink into the offered chair, despite every instinct telling her to run. "I'm Sang-hyuk," he said, settling across from her, "and you're not what I expected. I'm sorry to disappoint you. I didn't say I was disappointed." Their eyes met again, and Anya felt that strange flutter in her chest intensify. There was something in his gaze, an intensity that made her feel like he was seeing her, really seeing her, in a way no one had in years. "I should probably explain," she began, but he raised a hand gently. "Later. Are you hungry?" The next hour passed in a blur of confusion and unexpected conversation. The menu was in Japanese with prices that made Anya's eyes water, but Sang-hyuk ordered for both of them with easy familiarity. She tried to relax, but everything felt surreal. The exotic food, the attentive service, the way this mysterious man seemed genuinely interested in what she had to say. "You're a lawyer?" he asked at one point. Anya nearly choked on her miso soup. "A lawyer?" "No, She paused, suddenly understanding the mix-up. Someone had clearly given him the wrong information about her. "I clean law offices. At night. I'm also studying nursing." She waited for his expression to change, for the disappointment or dismissal she'd seen so many times before. Instead, his eyes grew more focused. "Tell me about nursing school." So she did. She found herself talking about her dream of becoming a pediatric nurse, about the children in her community who needed better health care, about the long hours balancing work and study. He listened with an attention that felt almost physical, asking thoughtful questions that showed he was really hearing her. "And your family?" he asked. Anya's throat tightened. "It's just me and my father now. He's in Haiti with my younger siblings, 4 of them. I send money when I can." "That's a heavy responsibility for someone your age." "Family takes care of family," she said simply, echoing words her mother used to say. Something shifted in his expression, a recognition perhaps of shared values despite their different worlds. When the meal ended and the check arrived, Anya reached for her purse. "I should pay my half—" "Absolutely not." "But I insist." "Anya." The way he said her name made her look up. "Let me handle this." Outside the restaurant, the rain had stopped, leaving the streets gleaming under neon lights. Sang-hyuk's driver waited beside a sleek black Mercedes that probably cost more than Anya made in 2 years. "Can I offer you a ride home?" Anya shook her head quickly. "No, thank you, I can manage." "How did you get here?" The question she'd been dreading. Heat flooded her cheeks as she looked down at her worn shoes. "I walked here," she admitted quietly. "Well, took 3 buses and walked the last part. I couldn't afford a taxi and I thought—" She trailed off, embarrassed. "You thought what?" "I thought maybe this was worth it." The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken meaning. When she finally looked up, something had changed in his face, a softness that transformed his sharp features entirely. "Get in the car, Anya." "I can't, please." The single word carried a weight that made her chest tight. "Let me take you home." Against every instinct screaming that she didn't belong in his world, Anya found herself sliding into the leather interior of the Mercedes. As they pulled away from the restaurant, she caught Sang-hyuk watching her in the reflection of the window, his expression unreadable but intense. She had no idea that in that moment everything had changed, that a man who had never believed in love had just felt his carefully constructed world shift on its axis, and that tomorrow he would find a way to see her again. Anya woke the next morning convinced the previous night had been an elaborate dream. but her black dress hanging on the back of her door and the business card tucked in her purse, elegant, minimalist, reading simply Yu Sang-hyuk, Hospitality Enterprises, proved it had been real. She tried to push thoughts of him away as she went through her morning routine, video call with her siblings in Haiti, quick breakfast of coffee and toast, review of nursing school notes before her afternoon classes. But his voice kept echoing in her mind, the way he'd said her name, the intensity in his dark eyes when she'd admitted to walking across the city just to meet him. Her phone rang as she was leaving for class. Unknown number. Hello? Anya, this is Sang-hyuk. Her heart did something acrobatic in her chest. Hi, I wasn't expecting to hear from you. I was wondering if you'd have dinner with me tonight. Somewhere more casual. She almost said yes immediately, then caught herself. I work tonight. I clean offices from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. What about tomorrow? I have classes during the day and work tomorrow night too. A pause. When do you not work? The question made her laugh despite herself. Sunday mornings, sometimes. Then Sunday morning it is. Coffee? 3 days later, Anya found herself in a small cafe in Wynwood, far from the glittering excess of South Beach. Sang-hyuk looked different in daylight, still impeccably dressed, but more relaxed in dark jeans and a white button-down. He'd arrived before her, she noticed, and had already ordered her coffee exactly as she liked it. How did you know? She asked, sliding into the seat across from him. You mentioned you take it with oat milk and cinnamon. I pay attention. The simple statement sent warmth through her chest. When was the last time someone had paid attention to details about her? Tell me about your week, he said, and she found herself describing her classes, her work, the small victories and frustrations of her daily life. He listened with the same focused attention he'd shown at dinner, asking questions that showed he was building a complete picture of who she was. What about you? She asked finally. What do you do exactly? Hospitality Enterprises is pretty vague. Something flickered across his features. I own several businesses in Miami, hotels, restaurants, entertainment venues. That sounds successful. It is. He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. But it's also complicated. There are aspects of my work that aren't always straightforward. Anya sensed there was more he wasn't saying, but something in his tone warned her not to push. Instead, she found herself studying his face, the sharp line of his jaw, the way his eyes crinkled slightly when he almost smiled, the small scar on his eyebrow that she wondered about. Can I ask you something? She said. Always. Why did you want to see me again? I mean, we're from completely different worlds. You could date anyone. But I don't want to date anyone. His voice was quiet but certain. I want to date you. The simple honesty of it stole her breath. Why? He was quiet for a long moment, his fingers wrapped around his coffee cup. Because when you told me you'd walked across the city just to meet a stranger, I realized I'd never met anyone with that kind of courage. Because you work 3 jobs and send money to your family and still find time to study for a career helping children. Because you looked at me like I was just a man, not a position or a bank account. Anya felt tears prick her eyes. Sang-hyuk. And because, he continued, his gaze holding hers, I've spent most of my life surrounded by people who want something from me. But you? You didn't even want to let me pay for dinner. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the weight of his words settling between them. Finally, Anya spoke. This is crazy, you know. We barely know each other. Then let's change that. Over the next 2 weeks, they began to do exactly that. Coffee dates that stretched into long walks through different Miami neighborhoods, late-night phone calls when Anya was on her cleaning breaks, text messages that made her smile during her nursing classes. Sang-hyuk was unlike anyone she'd ever known. Intelligent, thoughtful, with a dry sense of humor that caught her off guard. But there were shadows, too, moments when his expression would shudder, and she could sense the weight of responsibilities he carried. He never pushed for more than she was comfortable giving, never made her feel like she owed him anything. When she insisted on paying for her own coffee, he let her. When she said she needed to study instead of seeing him, he simply said he'd call her later. But the attraction between them was undeniable. The way his hand would brush hers when he helped her into his car. The way she caught him watching her when he thought she wasn't looking. The way her breath caught when he said her name. It was after their 5th date, a picnic in Bayfront Park where she'd insisted on bringing the food, that everything changed. "I have a proposition for you," he said, as they watched the sunset paint the bay in shades of gold and pink. Anya tensed. "What kind of proposition?" "A job. I'm expanding some of my hospitality businesses to better serve Miami's Caribbean community. I need someone who understands the culture, speaks the languages, knows what that community wants and needs." She stared at him. "You're offering me a job?" "I'm offering you a career. Full-time position, benefits, salary that would let you quit your night work and focus on finishing nursing school." The offer was everything she'd dreamed of and more, but something held her back. "Why me?" "Because you're brilliant, hardworking, and you understand both worlds. The community I want to serve and the business side of hospitality. Because I trust you." "And because you want to help me," she said quietly. He didn't deny it. "Would that be so terrible?" Anya's pride warred with her practical side. The salary he'd mentioned would change everything. For her, for her family. She could finish school without exhausting herself. Her siblings could have better food, better clothes, better opportunities. But accepting felt like crossing a line she wasn't sure she was ready to cross. "I need to think about it," she said finally. "Of course. Take all the time you need." That night, as Sang Hyuk's driver dropped her off in Little Haiti, Anya sat in her small apartment staring at the formal job offer he'd given her. The salary figure made her dizzy. The benefits package was better than anything she'd dared hope for. But it was the personal note attached that made her heart race. "This isn't charity, Anya. This is me recognizing your worth and hoping you'll let me be part of your life in a way that matters." She was still staring at the papers when her phone rang. Her father's voice crackled through the international connection. "Anya, chérie, I have bad news. Alexandra needs surgery on his appendix. The local clinic says they can do it, but the cost..." The amount he named was exactly what Anya had been saving for her final semester of nursing school. After she hung up, she looked at the job offer again. Then she picked up her phone and typed a simple message. "When do I start?" His response came immediately. "Tomorrow, if you're ready. Welcome to the team, Anya." What she didn't know was that across town, Sang Hyuk was staring at her acceptance message with an expression that would have surprised anyone who knew him. For the first time in years, he was nervous, because offering Anya the job hadn't been entirely about business. It had been about finding a way to keep her in his life, to see her every day, to be the one who helped her dreams come true. It had been about love, though he wasn't ready to call it that yet. But as he prepared to introduce her to his world, he couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change in ways he couldn't control. Anya's first day at Hospitality Enterprises began at 8 a.m. in a gleaming office tower in Brickell, Miami's financial district. The contrast to her previous work environments, empty office buildings in the dead of night, was jarring. Here, everything was glass and steel and purposeful energy. Sang Hyuk met her in the lobby personally, something that clearly surprised the security guards and receptionists, who greeted him with deep respect. "Ready?" he asked, his hand briefly touching the small of her back as he guided her to the elevator. The simple contact sent electricity through her, a reminder that whatever professional arrangement they were entering, the personal attraction hadn't disappeared. His office occupied the entire top floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of Biscayne Bay. But it was the smaller office adjacent to his that took her breath away. "This is yours," he said, opening the door to reveal a space that was both elegant and functional. Fresh flowers sat on the desk beside a new laptop and phone. The view looked out over the water toward the port of Miami. "Sang Hyuk, this is too much." "It's exactly what you deserve." His voice was firm. "You'll be working closely with me on the Caribbean expansion project. You'll need space that reflects your importance to this company." Over the next few hours, he introduced her to key staff members, each interaction revealing more about the scope of his business empire. Hotels, restaurants, event venues, all legitimate enterprises that employed hundreds of people and generated millions in revenue. But Anya's natural attention to detail began picking up inconsistencies, conversations that stopped when she entered rooms, phone calls conducted in rapid Korean that seemed to carry more tension than typical business discussions, numbers on financial reports that didn't quite add up in ways her memory for figures couldn't ignore. "Your job," Sang-hyuk explained over lunch in his private dining room, "will be to help me understand what the Caribbean community in Miami wants from hospitality businesses. Authentic food, cultural events, spaces where they feel welcomed and understood." "I can do that," Anya said, "but can I ask why this expansion is important to you?" Something shifted in his expression. "Because I know what it's like to be an outsider in this city. To feel like you don't quite belong anywhere. If I can create spaces where people feel at home." He didn't finish the sentence. But Anya understood. Despite his success, despite his obvious power and wealth, Sang-hyuk carried the same sense of displacement she'd felt her entire life in America. "Tell me about your family," she said gently. "Are they in Korea?" "My parents died when I was young. I was raised by my uncle." His voice was carefully neutral. "He taught me that family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's the people who choose to stand with you." "Like Raphael?" Sang-hyuk's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. "Raphael has been with me for 5 years. He's reliable." There was something in his tone that made Anya file the comment away for later consideration. That afternoon, she dove into her new responsibilities with enthusiasm that clearly impressed the staff. She conducted interviews with Caribbean business owners, researched cultural preferences, and began drafting proposals for authentic menu items and cultural programming. But it was during a late afternoon meeting about hotel renovations that she noticed something odd. "The Port Miami property," the architect was saying, "will need special considerations for the evening entertainment venues." "What kind of evening entertainment?" Anya asked. An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. Sang-hyuk's expression remained neutral, but she caught the quick glance he exchanged with Raphael. "Gaming," Raphael said smoothly. "High-end poker rooms, that sort of thing." Anya nodded. But something felt off. Gaming was heavily regulated in Florida. The casual way they'd discussed it, the tension in the room. It didn't feel like they were talking about legal poker rooms. That evening, Sang-hyuk insisted on driving her home personally. "How was your first day?" he asked as they navigated Miami traffic. "Educational," she said carefully. "Your businesses are more complex than I realized. Most successful enterprises are." She studied his profile as he drove, noting the tension in his jaw. "Sang-hyuk, can I ask you something?" "Always." "Are all your businesses legal?" The question hung in the air between them. For a moment she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he pulled over into a parking lot overlooking the bay and turned to face her. "That's a complicated question, Anya. It's actually pretty simple. Yes or no?" He was quiet for a long time, his hands gripping the steering wheel. "The hotels, restaurants, most of the entertainment venues, yes, they are completely legitimate. They employ good people, pay taxes, contribute to the community. And the others? The others operate in gray areas, gaming that isn't technically legal but isn't actively prosecuted, import businesses that sometimes don't declare everything to customs, entertainment that caters to exclusive clientele." Anya's heart sank, even as part of her had expected this answer. "So you're telling me you're a criminal?" "I'm telling you I'm a businessman who operates in a world where the lines aren't always clear." His voice was steady, but she could see the tension in his shoulders. "I don't hurt innocent people, Anya. I don't deal in drugs or human trafficking or anything that destroys lives. But do I operate outside conventional legal boundaries sometimes?" "Yes." She stared out at the water, processing this confirmation of what she'd begun to suspect. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you asked, because you deserve honesty, and because—" He paused, then continued quietly. "Because I'm falling in love with you, and I won't build that on lies." The confession hit her like a physical blow. She turned to stare at him, seeing vulnerability in his expression that she'd never witnessed before. "Sang-hyuk, I know it's complicated. I know it changes things. But I needed you to know who I really am before this goes any further." Anya's mind raced. Everything made sense now. The deference of his staff, the careful way people spoke around him, the inconsistencies she'd noticed. He wasn't just a successful businessman, he was something much more dangerous, and she was falling in love with him too. "What happens now?" she whispered. "That's up to you." His voice was rough with emotion. "You can walk away. I'll make sure you're taken care of, that your family is provided for. No strings, no consequences. And if I don't walk away, then you need to understand that my world comes with risks. People who don't like me, who might try to use you to get to me. A life that's never entirely safe or simple." Anya closed her eyes, thinking of her siblings in Haiti, of her dreams of becoming a nurse, of the way her heart raced every time Sang-hyuk looked at her. "I need time to think," she said finally. "Of course." He started the car again, his expression carefully controlled. "Take all the time you need." But as he drove her home through the neon-lit streets of Miami, both of them knew that some decisions couldn't be delayed forever, and neither of them noticed the black sedan that had been following them since they left the office, or the man inside taking photographs of their intimate conversation by the bay. Rafael Herrera was very interested in his boss's new weakness, and he was already planning how to use it. For 3 days, Anya threw herself into work with desperate focus, as if staying busy enough could postpone the decision that loomed over her. She interviewed restaurant owners in Little Haiti, researched Caribbean cultural events, and drafted detailed proposals for authentic hospitality experiences. But she couldn't stop noticing things. The way certain phone calls made Sang-hyuk's expression harden. The coded language used in meetings she wasn't supposed to understand. The fact that several business associates carried themselves like men accustomed to violence. And she couldn't stop thinking about the way he'd looked when he'd told her he was falling in love with her. Vulnerable and terrified and completely honest. On Thursday evening, as she was preparing to leave the office, Rafael Herrera knocked on her door. "Anya, do you have a moment?" She looked up from her computer, where she'd been reviewing financial projections that still didn't quite make sense. Of course. Rafael settled into the chair across from her desk, his expression friendly, but something calculating in his eyes. "How are you adjusting to everything?" "It's been a learning experience," she said carefully. "I'm sure it has. Sang-hyuk's world can be overwhelming for someone from your background." The comment stung, though she tried not to show it. "My background? I just mean you're not used to this level of complexity. The business world, especially Sang-hyuk's business world, operates by different rules than what you're accustomed to." Anya set down her pen, giving Rafael her full attention. "What exactly are you trying to say?" "I'm trying to look out for you," he said, leaning forward with apparent concern. "Sang-hyuk is my friend, but he's also my boss, and lately his judgment has been compromised." "Compromised how?" "He's taking risks he never would have taken before, making decisions based on emotion rather than strategy. The other night, for instance, he told you things about our operations that could be dangerous for you to know." Anya's blood chilled. "You were listening?" "I was doing my job protecting him, but I'm worried he's not protecting you, or himself." Rafael stood, smoothing his suit jacket. "I like you, Anya. You're smart, hard-working, genuine. But this world, it's not for everyone. And the longer you stay, the harder it becomes to leave safely." After he left, Anya sat in her office staring out at the darkening sky over Biscayne Bay. Rafael's words echoed in her mind, mixing with her own doubts and fears. She was still sitting there when Sang-hyuk appeared in her doorway. "Working late again?" She looked up to find him watching her with concern. He'd loosened his tie and rolled up his sleeves, making him look younger and less intimidating. "Just thinking," she said. About whether I'm in over my head." He entered her office and closed the door behind him, then leaned against it. "Did something happen?" Anya hesitated, then decided on honesty. "Rafael paid me a visit. He seems to think I'm a liability." Sang-hyuk's expression darkened. What did he say? That your judgment has been compromised, that I'm not safe knowing what I know, that this world isn't for someone like me. And what do you think? I think he might be right. The words hung between them like a blade. Sang-hyuk was quiet for a long moment, his jaw tight with controlled emotion. He is right, he said finally, about the danger, about the complications. But he's wrong about one thing. What's that? This world isn't for someone like you. You're too good for it, too pure. But that doesn't mean you can't be in it. It means you could change it. He moved closer, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. I've spent 10 years building an empire based on control and fear and calculated risks. But these past few weeks with you make me want to be better, to build something legitimate, something I could be proud of. Sang-hyuk, I love you, Anya. The words came out rough, desperate. I know it's selfish and dangerous and probably the worst thing I could do to you. But I love your courage and your kindness and the way you see possibilities, where everyone else sees problems. I love that you walked across the city just to meet a stranger. And I love that you're brave enough to call me out when something doesn't feel right. Tears pricked her eyes. I love you too. That's what makes this so hard. Then don't make it hard. Stay. Help me build something better. Before she could respond, his phone rang. He glanced at it, frowning. I have to take this. The conversation was in rapid Korean, but Anya caught enough tension in his voice to know something was wrong. When he hung up, his expression was grim. I have to go. There's a situation that requires my attention. What kind of situation? The kind that reminds me why Raphael thinks you're a liability. He moved toward the door, then stopped. Anya, I need you to go straight home tonight. Don't stop anywhere. Don't talk to anyone you don't know. Can you do that for me? Fear crept up her spine. You're scaring me. Good. That means you'll be careful. He paused at the door. We'll finish this conversation tomorrow, I promise. But as Anya gathered her things and headed for the elevator, she couldn't shake the feeling that tomorrow might be too late. She was halfway to the parking garage when her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. If you want to know the truth about what happened to the last woman who got too close to you, Sang-hyuk, meet me at the Fontainebleau Hotel bar in 1 hour. Come alone. A friend. Anya stared at the message, her heart pounding. Every instinct told her to delete it and go straight home as Sang-hyuk had asked, but the mention of another woman, the implication that something had happened to her. Against her better judgment, Anya found herself driving towards South Beach instead of Little Haiti. She had no idea that across town Rafael Herrera was making a phone call to Seoul, South Korea. Yes, sir, I understand your concerns about your nephew's recent behavior, he said in perfect Korean. I think it's time for a family intervention, and I have the perfect leverage to ensure Sang-hyuk sees reason. The trap was closing around them both, and neither Anya nor Sang-hyuk realized how much danger they were truly in. The Fontainebleau's lobby bar was a study in South Beach excess. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors, and beautiful people spending more on cocktails than Anya used to make in a week. She felt conspicuous in her simple work clothes, but she forced herself to find a quiet corner table and wait. She didn't have to wait long. The woman who approached her was elegant, probably in her early 30s, with the kind of polished beauty that spoke of money and privilege, but there was something haunted in her eyes. Anya Moreau? Yes, you're the one who texted me. The woman slid into the seat across from her. My name is Elena Vasquez. I was Sang-hyuk's companion, about 2 years ago. Anya's stomach dropped. Companion. Girlfriend, if you want to use simple terms. Though nothing about Sang-hyuk is simple. Elena signaled the waitress for a drink. I'm here because I heard through certain channels that he's involved with someone new, someone who might not understand what she's getting into. What happened between you two? Elena's laugh was bitter. I fell in love with him, just like you're doing. He was charming, generous, protective, made me feel like I was the center of his universe. And then his world caught up with us. Rivals who wanted to hurt him decided I was the perfect target. They kidnapped me, held me for 3 days, tortured me for information about his operations. Elena pushed up her sleeve, revealing faint scars on her wrist. Sang-hyuk got me back, but the damage was done. I couldn't handle the fear, The constant looking over my shoulder. The knowledge that loving him made me a target. Anya felt sick. What are you telling me? I'm telling you to run, before it's too late, before you're in so deep that leaving becomes impossible. Did Sang-hyuk know you were in danger? He tried to protect me, but he can't control everything. And his enemies know that the best way to destroy a man like him is to take away what he loves most. Elena finished her drink and stood. I'm telling you this because I don't want to see another woman go through what I did. Sang-hyuk isn't a bad man, but he's a dangerous one. And loving him, it's the most beautiful and terrifying thing you'll ever do. After Elena left, Anya sat alone in the bar, her mind reeling. Everything the woman had said aligned with her own fears, with Raphael's warnings, with the careful way Sang-hyuk had told her to go straight home. She was still sitting there when her phone rang. Sang-hyuk. Anya, where are you? You're not at home. How do you know where I am? Because I have people watching you tonight, for your safety. Where are you? The knowledge that she was being watched should have frightened her more, but instead it felt like confirmation of Elena's story. I'm at the Fontainebleau. Someone wanted to meet me. A long pause. Who? Elena Vasquez. The silence stretched so long she thought the call had dropped. Finally his voice came through, rough with emotion. I'm coming to get you. Don't move. 20 minutes later, Sang-hyuk strode into the bar looking like barely controlled fury. He scanned the room until he found her, then crossed to her table in quick strides. Are you all right? His hands framed her face, searching her expression. I'm fine, but we need to talk. Not here. He helped her to her feet. My car is outside. In the privacy of his Mercedes, with the partition raised between them and his driver, Anya finally confronted him. Tell me about Elena. Sang-hyuk's hands clenched on his knees. What did she tell you? That she was kidnapped and tortured because of her relationship with you. That loving you made her a target. It's true. His voice was barely audible. Every word of it. And you didn't think I should know this. I was trying to find a way to tell you, to explain that things are different now, that I have better security, more control. More control? Anya's voice rose. You just told me you have people watching me. How is that control? How is that a life? It's the life I can offer you, he said desperately. It's not perfect, but I can keep you safe. Like you kept Elena safe. The words hit him like a physical blow. He turned to stare out the window, his jaw working with suppressed emotion. I failed her, he said finally. I let my feelings cloud my judgment, and she paid the price. I swore I'd never let that happen again. So what changed? Why are you willing to risk it with me? He turned back to her, and she saw something raw and vulnerable in his expression. Because I can't breathe without you. Because these past few weeks have been the only time in my adult life that I felt like a man instead of just a position. Because I'd rather have a dangerous life with you than a safe life without you. Anya felt tears sliding down her cheeks. That's not fair. You can't put that choice on me. I'm not. I'm telling you I choose you, whatever the consequences. But you have to choose too. Before she could respond, Sang-hyuk's phone rang. He glanced at it, frowning. Raphael, I have to... Sang-hyuk. Raphael's voice was tight with urgency. We have a problem. Your uncle is here, from Seoul. He's at the office with a full delegation. Sang-hyuk went very still. When did they arrive? An hour ago. They want to see you immediately, and they want to meet your consultant. Anya watched the blood drain from Sang-hyuk's face. They know about Anya. They know everything. Someone's been feeding them information. The line went dead. Sang-hyuk stared at his phone for a moment, then looked at Anya with an expression of absolute devastation. What does this mean? She asked. It means my family has decided I'm a liability, and they're here to clean up the mess. What kind of mess? You. His voice was hollow. They think you're a weakness that compromises my effectiveness. They're here to eliminate that weakness. Anya's blood turned to ice. Eliminate how? By removing you from the equation. permanently if necessary. For a moment, they sat in stunned silence. Then Sang-hyuk grabbed her hands, his grip desperate. "Listen to me carefully. I'm going to take you somewhere safe, and then I'm going to handle this." "Handle it how?" "By choosing you over everything else I've ever known." He leaned forward to speak to his driver in rapid Korean. The car immediately changed direction. "Where are we going?" "To the marina." "I have a boat there. It's not registered to any of my businesses. You'll be safe while I deal with my family." "And then what?" Sang-hyuk was quiet for a long moment. "And then we disappear. New identities, new life, somewhere they can't find us." "You're talking about giving up everything." "I'm talking about choosing what matters most." As they raced through the neon-lit streets of Miami toward an uncertain future, Anya realized that Elena had been wrong about one thing. Loving Sang-hyuk wasn't just beautiful and terrifying. It was about to cost them everything they'd ever known. But as she looked at his determined profile, she knew with absolute certainty that she was ready to pay that price. Because some loves were worth any sacrifice, even if it meant running from the only life they'd ever known into an uncertain future together. The boat was waiting, and with it, their chance at freedom. If they could survive the night. 18 months later. The small cafe in Barbados overlooked a stretch of pristine beach where turquoise waves lapped against white sand. Anya smiled as she watched Sang-hyuk, now going by the name David Kim, attempt to negotiate with the local fisherman in his improving but still heavily accented English. "No, no," she called out in perfect Bajan dialect. "He's trying to tell you the fish was caught this morning, not yesterday." The fisherman grinned and switched to rapid local patois, which Anya translated effortlessly. Sang-hyuk shook his head, laughing. "I'm never going to master all these Caribbean dialects," he said, as they walked back toward their small beachfront restaurant. "Good thing you have me," Anya replied, bumping his shoulder playfully. Their restaurant, Harmony, was everything they'd dreamed of during those long nights planning their escape from Miami. It served authentic Caribbean cuisine, alongside Korean fusion dishes, creating something entirely new and beautiful. The local community had embraced them, and tourists were beginning to discover their unique blend of flavors and cultures. "How did the supply meeting go?" Anya asked as they entered through the back door. "Better than expected. We're going to be able to source everything locally for the new menu." He paused, watching her arrange fresh flowers in the dining room. "Any word from your family?" Anya's smile softened. Through a complex network of intermediaries, they'd been able to ensure her siblings in Haiti were provided for. Better than they'd ever been, in fact. Her father had been able to quit his back-breaking job and focus on the children's education. "Louise starts university next month," she said. "Pre-med, just like her big sister wanted to do." "And Alexandra?" "Still determined to become an engineer. Claire is top of her class, and Nicholas—" She laughed. "Nicholas wants to be a chef. Says he's going to come work for us someday." Sang-hyuk pulled her into his arms, marveling as he always did at how perfectly she fit against him. "Any regrets?" It was a question he asked periodically, usually when he was feeling the weight of what they'd both given up. Anya had never finished nursing school, though she'd found other ways to help people through their restaurant's community outreach programs. Sang-hyuk had walked away from an empire worth millions, though the legitimate businesses he'd built here were growing steadily. "Only one," she said, reaching up to touch the simple gold band on her left hand. "I regret that we had to have such a small wedding. I would have loved for my family to be there." They'd married 6 months ago in a simple ceremony on the beach, with only a few local friends as witnesses. It had been beautiful and intimate, but Anya sometimes wished for the celebration her mother would have planned. "Maybe someday," Sang-hyuk said softly, "when enough time has passed, when it's safe." They both knew that day might never come. Raphael's betrayal had been complete. He'd fed information to Sang-hyuk's family for months, positioning himself to take over the Miami operations when they removed Sang-hyuk from power. The last they'd heard, he was running the empire with the full backing of the Seoul organization, but they'd found something better than power or wealth. They'd found peace. "The dinner rush will start soon," Anya said, though she made no move to leave his embrace. 5 more minutes," he murmured against her hair. I want to remember this moment. What's special about this moment? You here, safe and happy, the restaurant full of people who've become our friends, the life we built together from nothing. He pulled back to look at her, his eyes warm with love and contentment. This is everything I never knew I wanted. Anya stood on her tiptoes to kiss him, tasting salt air and possibilities on his lips. I love you, David Kim. I love you too, Mrs. Kim. As the sun began to set over the Caribbean, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, they prepared for another evening of serving food and creating joy for their customers. It was a simple life, far removed